Thank you. So maybe if you could just begin by kind of speaking generally as to, some of the challenges that Kawhi and the rest of the Clippers present.
Well, how much time do you have? They're a team that, obviously all teams watch each other throughout the course of the year. You're familiar with, those two guys, obviously, in particular, and the things that they're capable of doing. I think sometimes because they're such great players, there's a tendency not to talk as much just naturally about some of the other guys in their team. And, even a guy like Mann coming in and the impact he had in the series, what Morris did today, hitting big shots, Kennard coming in and making big shots, Batum defending. You can go down the line, Patrick Beverly, his ball pressure, and his competitiveness, Zubac, what he does. They're a very, very good, excellent, well-balanced team. And they present problems in a lot of different ways. They can play small, which, they've done a lot against Dallas. They can play big, which we've seen before too. So we've got our hands full, and that's what you expect in the playoffs. But a team certainly that, we're well aware of how good they are and have tremendous respect for them. What Ty's done throughout the course of the year, historically, the way that he's managed teams in the playoffs, they've got a great coach. We know they'll be really prepared, and we've just got to try to do the same thing.
Tony Jones, The Athletic.
Coach, in the matchup with the Clippers in February, they closed with a lineup with Marcus Morris Sr. At the 5. And that was one of their dominant lineups in the series against Dallas. How impactful was that lineup going? Does that lineup have a potential to be for the Clippers going forward in this series? And how do you guys deal with it on both sides of the floor?
Well, that's why you study teams and you scout teams. And certainly, as you said, the way that they played against Dallas, the way that they space the floor, you have, the top 3-point shooting team in the league. They make them at a higher percentage than anyone else. So they're able to put 5 guys out there that can all make shots. And then they have other guys that can create shots. So there's a lot of things that go into that. You're going to end up giving something up. Certainly, they know who we are. And you can anticipate a lot of the things that will go into that with different adjustments that teams will make to try to either exploit what they perceive as weaknesses or, accentuate strengths. So without getting too deep into the weeds, suffice to say we know what that game 3 was like. We know what it was like down the stretch and how they played, how they spaced, and then saw their Dallas series. They watched our Memphis series. They've watched the games that we've played. And, I'm sure between now and Tuesday, everybody will be watching some more. So again, that's the playoffs, and, you're not going to be able to take everything away. You just have to, to a certain degree, play percentages, try to make things hard, and be prepared to adjust at given times. And, those adjustments are never completely black and white. They involve timing. They involve preparation. So, again, you usually know more as the series progresses, and you make some assumptions on the front end, and you go from there.
All right. Next up, Andy Larson, Salt Lake Tribune.
Quinn, they made so many changes in kind of who they played during that series, and including today. How hard is it knowing that, they do have kind of 11, maybe even 12 guys that could rotate in there, and kind of being able to teach your players kind of all the things that they need to do to defend those guys in kind of the most intelligent way, I guess?
Well, personnel is always a big part of your preparation, knowing different guys' tendencies. I think their depth certainly, makes them unique. You saw again what Mann did, in a couple games the way that he impacted the game on the glass defensively, banging some shots. I thought what Luke Kennard did, he missed a couple in game 6, and obviously he's confident, and he should be. He's an excellent shooter. Certainly, we're familiar with their personnel. It doesn't matter if there's 2 guys or 5 guys or 10 guys, but part of your preparation involves digging deeper, and I think it also involves combinations, because when certain guys play together, that creates different looks on the floor. So that's another thing that you have to be aware of. And the playoffs, I won't say come down only to matchups, but certainly matchups are a big part of it. And you're going to have what you consider to be better matchups than others, but that's hopefully we have some advantages there at certain places as well. And but as far as just knowing their personnel, I don't think the fact that they have depth and that they are playing different lineups and different guys, that there's no danger that we're not going to be aware and prepared that anybody coming off the bench is going to catch us by surprise as far as that they're capable of doing. That doesn't mean we're always going to be able to prevent it from happening, but at least you can think about it and educate your team. And we've got guys that study. Some of that is collectively, and some of that's things that they do on their own, which we always encourage as well.
Sarah Todd, Deseret News.
Quinn, how valuable were the last few days and the 5 days that you have in between the series, not only I guess for like rest and recuperation for Mike and Donovan especially, but also for that preparation to give the time, players time to watch that film and scout the teams?
From a preparation standpoint, and it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because up until an hour or so ago, we didn't know who we were going to play. So it's hard to kind of go down a rabbit hole with either team in trying to predict who's going to win, and how you would game plan against Dallas versus against obviously the Clippers. That happens more with our staff, and trying to be prepared to the extent that you can, before the tipping point occurs and you dig down even deeper. So there's some things that, you can focus on yourselves, that you feel like may be applicable no matter who you play, and anticipate some of those things, which I think is something we've tried to do. The first round, we were in a similar situation where we played a team in Memphis that had played some very competitive games prior to, essentially game 7s. And we had been rested. I thought we didn't have quite the level of continuity that we wanted in that first game. So that cuts both ways. Sometimes timing and continuity and rhythm can trump rest. Obviously there's a balance there. To the extent that you're able to practice, that becomes challenging, frankly, at this point in the year, because you're conscious of making sure that everybody's healthy and at their best. So as I said, I think you can see it from both sides, and you just try to do your best balancing those two things, and and then taking advantage of tonight and tomorrow and Tuesday morning to try to prepare more specifically for the Clippers.
Ben Anderson, KSL Sports.
Quinn, a little bit off topic, I guess, but 7 years ago you were hired. Today, what do you look back on fondly, and kind of this journey you've been on with the Jazz to where you are now?
Well, I remember trying to get to the Atlanta airport to make a flight on the last flight out so I could be in for the press conference the next morning, because Greg Miller had to leave town, and it was pretty important for me to get there. I was hopeful if I didn't make the flight, I'd still have the job. But I do remember that moment in the afternoon. I just had my hip replaced. So needless to say, it was a long flight. Someone reminded me of that today, actually. I didn't know it was today, 7 years ago today, but it makes you feel gratitude that you got an opportunity, and two, that you've been able, with the support, of Dennis Lindsay and the Millers, and, now Ryan Smith and the staff and the players. I think anytime you're able to coach for a number of years in this league, you're really fortunate. I do remember, going through the list and adding them all up and factoring out the top and the bottom and coming to 2.3 years. So when it was halfway through my third year, I figured I was doing okay after that. So I don't know that anybody could anticipate being somewhere for an extended period of time in this business. So it makes you feel really grateful that, you've been around people that have really allowed you to have a certain level of success that has continued to provide that opportunity. And that, that's your players, that's Joe Ingles and Rudy and Donovan and, now JC and Boyan and Fave. And, you go through I thought about Joe Johnson the other day when I found out that when we could play the Clippers, because I remember that team. And so again, I think you're grateful as much as anything. And, it's the same thing we try to tell our team. You just can't take any year, any game, anything for granted. That, you never know when opportunities present themselves. And that's certainly the case on a broader scale as well.
All right, that's all the questions for today. Thank you so much for your time, Coach.
Thank you.